question which you're asking was post-lockdown. So I want to give a perspective which is different for us, especially on the FMCG side of the business. I think there were two, three things which we did during the lockdown. I think once the lockdown happened, we were really, our first focus was really how do we get operations started to get the essential products to the customer. So within, I think, a week after the beginning of, I think the March 23rd, towards the end of March, we were really getting the business back in normal, just in terms of the factories, the supply chain, and there was a whole BCP around that. So for us, it was very important. On the B2B side, I think during the lockdown, it was important for us to see whether we can do any product innovation from a pandemic standpoint. Is there anything which we can work on where a market is basically created? Because you have to remember that nobody can really grow managing costs. I mentioned this earlier that managing costs is a culture issue, tone at the top. You do not need very great specific tools to figure out or look at where costs are. Because if you have an organization which right from the top is looking at cost at a micro level before the pandemic, or even as a culture, there's nothing specifically which you can do. I think the obvious ones are travel, all that will go away, or at least in the medium term will get normal. Will come down. But from a standpoint of how do we really manage it, nothing really needs to change. But what will really change when you look at a zero-based cost concept is really what the cost drivers are. And this is where I think the business model of what is going to happen post, as we come into the new normal, how does it really change? And I look at it two ways. One is the business model will change because wherever aggregation is there, through distributors or otherwise, we see technology basically disrupting that. So if you look at all the technology players, either an Uber or some of the other companies, they are all breaking the aggregator part of it. So wherever the technology is disrupting your business model, you will definitely relook at the cost side. To basically say, where do you really need to incur the cost, and how do we really need to use the technology basically going forward, and how do you really simplify going forward? So there, I think there's a natural play which will happen as the business models change area. Second thing, the way we look at cost is, I think we need to basically understand whether the cost we're incurring is the right cost. How do we bring technology there? How do we drive, say, for example, automation in factories more? Because India, as you know, we are probably at industry 2.0 or 1.5. But how do we really get to an industry 4.0, which is really using technology in all these front lines to say, how do we really pick up the data? How do we really serve the customer, more importantly? Thirdly, we will have to kind of see, one of our biggest spends area, for example, is in, let's say, advertising and sales promotion. How do you really be effective in that? Can technology allow you to do micro targeting of customers so that you're not, sending out some general ad, but very specific schemes, very specific targeted audience, and how do you really look at pushing and making sure that the cost which you're spending or the money which you're spending is really having an effective return on investment from that standpoint. I think one of the things which, as we kind of do that, is really looking at the whole change management of it, because companies will have to look at change management both from the leadership standpoint and the rank and file, and how do you really manage that change becomes a key priority for all the CEOs and the CFOs as we move forward.